Your PMP exam is tomorrow. You've been preparing for the past 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 months if you're like me, maybe even more. But it's going to culminate in a day known as PMP exam day. Are you ready for that day? You cannot be ready if you have not created a plan. The same way we talk about planning in the real world, you need a plan for your exam. So, journey with me. I'm going to show you the tricks of the trade as far as how to pass the exam. I've trained and mentored thousands of students across the world, and I've also been a student on the exam, so I can tell you the tricks of the trade to be mentally prepared. The first step I'm going to share with you is to go in there with your Superman, your Superwoman mind. You cannot afford to go in there feeling, oh, I'm not ready, I'm going to fail. No, regardless the preparation, if your exam is scheduled for tomorrow, you got to go in there with the superwoman mindset, with the superman mindset. So I need you to go in there with the I can do it, I will do it attitude. It's free. No one's asking you to pay. You need to have a positive mental attitude. The great Zig Ziglar said, it is your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. This holds true on the PMP exam. It's all about how you go in, and that's the way you're likely to come out. So, tip number one, my friends, you got to go in there with panic mode off. You got to go in there Superman mode, and you got to remember others have done it. Just like me, I was in the exam and I was in panic mode. Oh, I'm on question 20 and it's already 1 hour. Oh, I'm going to fail. And that was the mindset. But all of a sudden, the Superman mindset kicked in and said, no, fail, you can't fail. You spent all this time studying in the Mesa library. You've got to succeed. And I went through this. Am I going to live? Am I going to be slain on the exam? And eventually I chose no. I'm going to show the exam who's boss. I told the exam I can. I can deal with ambiguous questions. I'll go to the end of this section and I'm going to work the exam backwards. And that's exactly what I did. The weird stuff, I came across it, but I kept going. I changed my mindset from being weakling and defeatist right there in the middle of the exam. And you don't even need to wait till you get to the exam. You need to tell yourself, I can do it. Others have done it. Thousands, over 1 million people have gotten their PMPs. So you need to tell yourself, I'm going to succeed. Many students who felt lost during the exam ironically came out on top. How much more when you go in with a mindset to succeed? Tip number two, know the exam format and strategy. 180 questions, 240 minutes, two optional breaks. Forget about the target score. Just go in there knowing I got to kill it. I got to bring it. I got to do the best I can, and you will. So there are different question types. There's multiple choice, there's matching, there's hotspot, there's fill in the blanks. You got to go in there understanding that some of the quizzes you did may not be exactly like the exam. The exam has got all sorts of new types of questions. So your strategy needs to be, I'm going to flag the hard questions and come back, but I'm not going to spend more than a minute on each question. 77 seconds max. Eliminate obviously wrong answers first. Read every question twice. Trust your first instinct on reviews and take breaks. Now, if you're reading twice, you got to be really fast. Some people are slow readers, and I want to suggest you look into Jim Quick, Kwik. He teaches how you can read fast. Speed reading is very important, but you don't want to do speed reading without rehearsal. So if you're watching this in advance, I would advise you find Jim online. It's somewhere on YouTube, and he's also got a website where you can actually invest in learning his approach to speed reading. Okay. So, know the exam format is my suggestion. Master the three domains, there's people, process, and business, and it's all mixed. Keep telling yourself, I do not expect to see questions as obvious, right? So, the process domain is the largest part of the exam, but just remember it could be agile, it could be hybrid, and it could also be predictive. The exam is broken down into 40% predictive and 60% agile and hybrid. Just remember this as you're going in. If you're expecting to see everything predictive, you will be surprised because there's a ton of agile, okay? All right. And just remember 10 of the questions don't count. You do not know which ones. There are 12 principles in PMBOK 7. In PMBOK 8, there are 6. So I'm showing you the old format in the seventh edition because I prefer the granularity. A lot of your questions can be tagged into one of these buckets. You got to be a good steward. You got to lead the team. You got to lead stakeholders. You should always be thinking of value, think of big picture systems thinking. Leadership is everything. Everything rises and falls on leadership, as John Maxwell would say. Tailoring, you got to tailor those processes. You got to build quality in. Complexity, you need to use agile and flexibility to tackle complexity. It will appear on every project in some degree. Risk needs to be managed. You got to be adaptable and you got to be resilient because the projects that you work on, they will put you to the test and you have to be adaptable. And this is how you get resilient. If you're not adaptable, you will not be resilient. And then change, you got to manage change. That's what project management is all about. You also need to, in tip five, understand that the performance domains have now become seven. So your questions definitely can fall into any of these. You see, when we talk about domains, there are three exam domains: people, process, business, that I talked about, but those are exam domains. We have performance domains in PMBOK 8, and you have to be aware of the lingo. So as you're going into the exam, just be on your A game to remember, is it schedule? Is it cost? Is it scope? Is it governance? Is it mixed in one way or another? Are they blending two areas together? But the biggest thing I can tell you is just have your PMI hat on to know, okay, where am I on the landscape of the 40 processes or however many processes your exam is? Where am I? Where's the next move? Like if someone says you just developed a work breakdown structure, what do you do next? Is it A, governance? Is it B, resources? Is it C, risk? Is it D, something to do with schedule? Well, if your WBS is created, the next logical thing is to begin developing that schedule to define the activities, right? So you got to understand how everything fits together. Tip number six, know your earned value formulas. When these come up, they are low hanging fruit. CPI, SPI, CV, SV, EAC, ETC, VAC, and TCPI. These are like the basic ones. There are many more. There are other ways you can calculate EAC, but I would say at least know the basic one. So if earned value shows up, you're ready to tackle it. If you don't know it like the day before, then I would say just focus on the first four, leave the others alone. Risk management is big. You need to understand the A team: avoid, transfer, escalate, accept, mitigate, and the easy: exploit, accept, share, enhance, escalate, or however you want to arrange those E's in the positive risk responses. But this will definitely be a big part of your exam. And expected monetary value, just remember probability times impact, that could come up as well. Stakeholder management, your power interest grid or your influence impact grid. Just remember, how do you deal with a high power, high influence stakeholder, high power, high interest stakeholder, right? Manage close versus keep informed. You got to know this grid. This is a big one when you do come across it. Hybrid and agile approaches, very important these days. There are various ways you can combine agile and predictive. And the PMI show four models for hybrid. You can have predominantly agile with a little bit of predictive, predominantly predictive with a little bit of agile, or you can have a sub where you have, I call it an agile predictive sub, where they're overlapping throughout the duration of the project. And then you can also have, I do agile first, and then I do predictive, or I do predictive first, and I do agile. It really depends. But understand that you got these roles very similar to the world of Scrum. This could be used in a number of questions without really calling out the Scrum Master as a Scrum Master. On some questions, the Scrum Master might be called out as a PM, but it doesn't change the fact that the Scrum Master is a roadblock remover, the PM is a roadblock remover. The product owner knows the business. A stakeholder, your key stakeholders, of course, they know the business and what they want. So they could dress up a product owner as just a high powered stakeholder, or they could dress him up as a sponsor. Keep that in mind. Know your artifacts and know your key agile metrics. But I suspect you'll get a lot of agile questions dressed up with other terminology. Number 10, critical path method. This used to be rather big on the exam, but I'm expecting you need to know, especially crashing and fast tracking and the mindedness of the critical path. I would find it very strange if, like, 5 out of 10 people didn't get a critical path question. I can almost put money on it. You will get some sort of slack flow, leads, lags, early start, late start. You will get some of this terminology because it's the holy grail of project management. All right. Tip number 11, procurement and contracts. You got to know what makes fixed price itself, what makes cost reimbursable itself. And that means knowing all three: FFP, FP-EPA, FPIF. Know those. Same for your cost reimbursable. Know what makes each one different. Cost plus award fee, very shady. Beware. Use fixed price contracts when scope is well defined. Use cost reimbursable when scope is unclear, and use time and materials for short term, unclear scope, staff augmentation, things like that. Quality management, tip number 12, build quality in, don't inspect it in. In other words, prevention is better than cure. Just remember, quality assurance versus quality control. There are various quality tools. There's 7 basic ones: cause and effect diagrams, flow charts, Pareto's, histograms, check sheets, control charts, scatter diagrams, and you do need to know these. We also have the cost of conformance and the cost of non-conformance, as you can see here on the screen. And what do we mean by the cost of conformance? Cost of conformance, these are actually good costs, like when you are conforming to the requirements, when you're conforming to quality and you're spending money to do it, that's good. The cost of nonconformance, the problem with the cost of nonconformance is a penalty that you will pay for not paying attention to quality, internal failure cost, external failure cost, scrap, rework, lost business, all that bad stuff. We don't want that. But being aware of the cost of quality for your exam is huge. All right, tip number 13, ethics and professional responsibility. Even though it is not written out verbatim in the PMBOK guide or in the ECO, you gotta sign off on this before your PMP exam. You gotta say, yes, I've read the PMI Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. So, responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty, these are big. So, we have mandatory standards and we have aspirational standards. Report on ethical behavior, right? Do not engage in discrimination. Disclose conflicts of interest. Do not deceive stakeholders. It's like someone saying, oh, I'm aspiring to tell the truth. No, you should tell the truth. That's mandatory. Aspirational could be creating an environment where people feel safe. You see, there's a difference. You will get situational ethics questions. Choose the most ethical and the most informed. Make sure you know the legal terminologies, and in that way you won't fall into traps on the exam. Tip number 14, do your brain dump. If you got the time to do it, do a brain dump. It's kind of like therapy, to be honest. Some people find it to be very therapeutic, and others say, oh, it's a waste of time. But I'd say follow the mindedness of just doing your brain dump, dumping down a bunch of things. It helps some people. And if you're one of those that you find it relaxing and therapeutic, just do it. All right, number 15, review high probability stuff tonight. Risk, stakeholder, agile, EVM, change management, executing, and monitoring and controlling. And again, these are speculative. Nobody knows the exact number or percentages, but executing and monitoring and controlling is really big, as is planning. But even those that are not huge, not paying attention to them could make or break your exam. All right, number 16, practice your exam plan. So the night before, don't cram, watch a movie, take it easy, free up your mind, right? The exam morning, eat a good breakfast, leave early. Please don't leave late. Don't be like me scrambling around to my venue. I went out to teach and I decided I was going to go to my venue the night before, and thank goodness I did, because if I didn't, I would have found a brick wall where the exam venue was supposed to be. It was actually around the brick wall. So yeah, don't leave it too late, like to the last day and check in. Just go there in advance, maybe some days in advance. Check out your venue. Don't leave it to the last minute. And please, no last minute cramming in the parking lot is a bad habit I used to have. I don't do it anymore. Do breathing exercises if you're nervous. And during the exam, you can do your brain dump again. And you're going to have three buckets of 60 questions. So just strategize as you're going through each. Don't spend so much time on your first group of 60 because you may not recover from it if you spend too much time on the first or the second 60. Make sure you equally distribute your time as much as possible. I've had some people that have like 10 minutes or 15 minutes left for the last 60 questions. Don't let that happen to you. I would say EPS, eat, pray, sleep. That's what you got to do. Your brain uses 20% of your body's energy. Don't skip breakfast. It's important. Bring snacks and water. Avoid heavy foods that cause sluggishness. If you're a person of faith, pray. Why not? It's free. Center yourself mentally and spiritually the night before and the morning of the exam. It could radically shift your mindset powerfully. And S, sleep. 7 to 8 hours is not optional. Honestly, I know some people say, Phil, I have a hard time sleeping. I'm going to study. No, close that book. Don't open the book. Keep it closed and do your best to get a good night's sleep. A big part of your exam is knowing how to deal with tricky questions. And what I want to present to you is what I call the PMI. It's a play on words, the PMI. What do I mean by the PMI? Well, it's the eye of understanding. You see the pupil in the middle? That's the PMI, which tells you what this is about. This is all about understanding how to deal with PMP questions. This is the central framework, the method and mindset for answering situational questions on the PMP exam. You got to synthesize everything down to problem solving. And very quickly, this is the idea. When you come across a PMI question, it's either going to be in initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, or closing. Even if it's from the world of Agile, it will fall into one of these progressive buckets. In addition to that, your question could be from governance, or scope, or schedule, or finance, or stakeholders, resources, or risk. This is the PMI of understanding. You got to know where you are and you got to see it through that lens. If you're not seeing the world through that lens, you could struggle. Okay? So, knowing the purple and the red is important. Now, when you have a good understanding of that, you got to understand the dig sieve, DIGCIV. What do I mean by that? Dig sieve, dig sieve, DIGCIV. Dig sieve just means you are applying an understanding of defining the problem. You got to define the problem. You got to identify the root cause. And I'm going to explain why you jump from one to four. Two and three are sub steps under defining the problem. So you define the problem, you identify the root cause, you generate alternatives, you choose the best alternative, you implement the alternative, and you verify solution effectiveness. Now let's go into a little bit more detail so I can clarify what this is about. So this can be found at pmradio.org if you wanted to explore it on your own. But number one, define, articulate the overarching problem statement or project goal with clear, measurable parameters. Your key actions very quickly in your head, or if you're doing this in the real world as problem solving, you could write a concise description of the issue, clearly state what is in and out of scope for the problem solving effort, and ensure the definition aligns with broader business goals. So we think about being specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound in terms of our goals. Then we think about breaking down the problem, right? Decompose the overarching issue into manageable, distinct components to avoid overwhelming the team. When you get a question on the exam, you very quickly need to mentally deconstruct it, break down the larger problem into smaller logical subproblems. Like if someone says, oh, the project is a disaster. Okay, what do we mean by that? We got to break it down into schedule, scope, costs, stakeholders, the team. You got to understand what exactly is the problem. Now, if someone says, "Oh, the problem is we're running late," okay, then you need to understand why are we late. So breaking down the problem and collecting data like on your question, you got to kind of sniff out the question to gather the data that might be buried in the question, because sometimes the data could help you unravel the problem. Like if someone says you're running late by 0.1%, well, that's not as bad as running late by 25%. So sometimes the data could give you an idea as to what the approach to solve the problem could be, what wiggle room you have, such and such. So define the problem, break down the problem, collect data, and then identify the root cause. Utilize structured techniques to isolate the fundamental driver of the issue. And all of this is being done as you're reading a PMP question. You are identifying the root cause. You're very quickly in your mind's eye generating alternatives. Now, in the real world, when you're problem solving, you get your team on board, right? You ask your team, what do you think we could do to solve this problem? Well, your brain is very powerful and it's doing all of those things while you're looking at a PMP question, generating the alternatives. And then you got a list of four potential if you're doing a multiple choice question, well, you got to choose the best alternative or alternatives. So choose the best alternative. And then again, in your mind's eye, as you're sitting there in the exam, ask yourself, does this really solve the problem? And have a double check, verifying effectiveness. You can't do that as though you were in the real world, but you could simulate it by saying, based on all the data and what I'm seeing, let me just have one quick double check. And you're speed reading, you're coming up with the ideas, you're doing all this very quick. So initiating, you got to know if you're in initiating, am I just beginning a new project or phase? Is it a project charter? Am I identifying stakeholders? Or am I creating baselines and other plans? Or am I executing? Am I completing the actual work? Or is a team completing the actual work? Am I directing the work? Am I creating a report? Am I measuring performance? What exactly am I doing? Where am I? Am I closing? Is this the end of the entire thing? So that's one side of question perspective. The other side is, am I establishing frameworks and functions? Am I establishing oversight? Am I trying to integrate the project? Am I trying to put bits and pieces together? Am I trying to work on a lessons learned? What am I doing? Who am I working with? Scope, what am I doing? Am I collecting requirements? Am I creating the WBS? Am I in some sort of elicitation? Am I in an interview or focus group or getting some questionnaires together for a client to collect requirements? You got to know where you are. Scheduling, am I working on the schedule or finance? Am I thinking of the financial aspects of the project budget? Am I thinking of cash flow? Am I thinking of NPV, net present value, and things like that? Stakeholders, am I working with my stakeholders to identify them and engage them? Resources, am I working with my team to effectively lead them? Or am I dealing with risk, similar to what I showed you prior? So, my friends, when you're thinking of the exam, it's going to boil down to the PMI, the I of your PM life, right? So, your key actions as you're thinking at this umbrella level, you're aligning strategy, you're integrating domains, and you're adapting and pivoting. And this is not just for predictive, this is also for the world of agile. So, the question, my friend, that you need to ask yourself is, am I ready? And if you feel ready, that's great. Take what I've given you, put it into production, and I wish you all the very best. I also want to encourage you to go to pmradio.org. It's a free site. I support people during their PMP and after their PMP on pmradio.org. So you might want to go check that out, okay? Over the past number of minutes, my friends, we have been exploring how to dominate on the exam. Just think of these two things. Go in there, cool, calm, and collected. You got to have the Superman mindset, and then you got to EPS before you get in there. Eat, pray, sleep. Report back. Let me know that you killed it. You absolutely can, but you got to know you can for yourself. Even before you get in, you got to know that you can. All right. Thank you for joining me. I wish you all the very best. If you got any questions, put them in the comments below. Always happy to answer your questions. Take care. Bye for now.